Cool.
It's a fun session.
Yeah, definitely. सुस्वागतम, स्वागत है एक नए नवेले पॉडकास्ट में काफी टाइम बाद. कितने टाइम बाद मुझे पता नहीं. आई रिमेम्बर हम जब 6 बजे तक लाइक इंडियन स्टैंडर्ड टाइम 6 AM तक वी यूज्ड टू टॉक अबाउट इंडियन फुटबॉल क्लब हाउस में. वो सॉर्ट ऑफ वो टाइम थे. एंड उससे आई गॉट टू नो अबाउट यू. एंड उससे पहले आई न्यू अबाउट लाइक आई डिडंट न्यू मच अबाउट इंडियन जर्नलिस्ट या फिर जो सॉर्ट ऑफ इंडियन फुटबॉल को like conversationalist. I don't know how to portray the proper like terminology, but I knew Novi Kapadia sir. Like I used to follow sort of his work, unki book read kari, and kaise wo TV mein aate the the way he used to be encyclopedia. And then I was like, okay, there's one guy in like clubhouse mein, he's Arunava sir. I got to know you obviously a bit late, meri galti. But then I was like, we have to do a podcast with you. You are the experience source. I think you flexed also. मुझे याद है जब I think जब मैं भाईचुंग भूटियाला sort of I asked you for a footage and you were like, I think you are the Indian who's watched the national team the most live, like stadiums में रह के like बाहर कतर में travel करके. You definitely must have.
So if I look at the last 21 years, first time abroad में देखा कब 2000 England. So if I look at England में देखा, I've seen them in the UAE, I've seen them in Qatar, youth teams I've seen here in Germany or in England. I've seen recently, I saw in October, the Indian under-23s in the qualifier in Fujairah, that crazy match where they won 4-1 penalties against Kyrgyz Republic, where they walked in and they had to come out again. Or the draw with Qatar in the World Cup qualifier, where I flew from Mumbai and actually nearly missed the match because there was a flight delay. So I've watched a lot of games around the world. Caribbean mein team ke saath tha when they went on a Caribbean tour in 2011. So I've traveled with the team. I've worked with the team.
Like, were you part of the like sort of system mein? Like basically what do you do technically in terms of, I think we definitely are born in Germany. How did you get into Indian football, the whole journey?
So when you are born and brought up in Germany, football is the most normal thing to follow. Football is here by far the biggest sport, and as a kid to play, to follow football is the most normal thing. In those days, my hometown team FC Remscheid used to play second Bundesliga. Now they're only a 6th division club, but there used to be a pro team in those days. Used to be successful in the cup, where big teams like Bayern, Mönchengladbach, Kaiserslautern used to be big in those days. They used to regularly come here and play cup matches. And at the age of 10, I went for 5 years to Kolkata to study at an international school. And one of my first questions to one of my uncles who used to live in Germany and who was also a football crazy guy, he's even 80 plus now, but he still follows football very passionately, is there football here in Kolkata? And he then said, you know what, you'll be surprised, there's a lot of football. And then, look at the Maidans, understanding that why our family supports East Bengal. So it's not a choice that I could have chosen between East Bengal or Mohun Bagan or Mohammedan or another team. So as a young kid, I fell in love with Indian football and I've been following it since then. And in 1998, the situation arose that I started to learn how to utilize or use HTML, how to code, how to create websites. And I then created a website about myself. I created a website about my home city of Remscheid. I even created a page.
Basically, right? Like I was checking it.
No, that became IndianFootball.com.
Oh, okay.
That is the old website.
Something like that.
98. April 1998. And I was surprised in those days. Again, if we're talking about 1998, there was no social media. Yahoo was the biggest search engine.
Orkut, Yahoo, and all.
Orkut was very, very important. Orkut was where you used to share your links for people to be able to read your stuff. Orkut was also a very good discussion platform. And 3 or 4 newspapers only had their websites. And I remember on day 3 of having started the website, it was not a website, it was just a page which certain results and some infos on Indian football I was gathering on the net. And a gentleman called Paul Demio contacted me, who is a professor in those days at a Scottish university for the history of football. So he was at the time actually researching football on India. And Paul said, great, continue doing it and whatever. And somehow or the other, I got in touch with people like Novi Kapadia, Jaideep Basu in Delhi, a guy called Sunil Warrior in Mumbai, David Bodapati in Bangalore, my very, very good friend Dhiman Sarkar of the HT in Kolkata, Amitabh Das Sarma of Kolkata of Hindu. And, and those guys sort of helped me. And not only me, initially I was alone. And then a few months later, my very, very good friend, Chris Ponakato Daniel joined me, who interestingly asked me about the India jersey. And he lives 140 kilometers away from me. So he was, so to say, my colleague and my partner in crime, besides another guy in those days called Daniel Ponatu, who literally lived halfway between Chris and me here in Germany, in a city called Hagen. So it was quite funny that three of us living in Germany were running India's first ever football website, trying to track. And, in those days, there was a lot of hype with the National Football League started in 99. Baichung Bhutia went to England. So even before Baichung went to England, I met Jazz Baines and Raj Purohit, the people who were about to take Baichung to the UK. He was supposed to go on trial to Aston Villa, then to Fulham, ended up at Bury under Neil Warnock. And Neil Warnock liked him. Neil Warnock signed him.
He scored one goal, right? Neil Warnock in left. That tenure?
No, I think he scored 3. I think there's a wonder goal in the first season. I think he scored 3. There's a wonder goal against Chesterfield. There's also a video still of that available. A typical Baichung Bhutia goal. Yeah. And the sad part was that Neil Warnock left. Neil Warnock joined Sheffield United, and a little later took Sheffield United to the Premiership. And the new coach wasn't so big of a Baichung fan, and Baichung got injured. Baichung struggled a lot with injuries during this time there, sadly, because I think that Baichung Bhutia had the quality and had the class to succeed in the old English second division.
What prompted you to open a website 98? Like, obviously you observe Indian football as a young kid in Kolkata, and you feel like, okay, there's football in Kolkata and there's humongous around, like Kolkata is the capital football of India, like supposedly historically. Like, was there very lack of sort of talk about the game, considering you were in one of the most popular states of the country in terms of football? What prompted you to sort of, okay, mujhe information provide karni hai and I need to sort of aware people ki this is my take on football and this is what's happening?
So at the time, there was a gentleman called R. Jaya Krishnan who had started a page about tennis. So that was the prime of Leander Mahesh Bhupati, being the best in the world. And I was, and still today I do follow Indian tennis quite a bit. But and then I thought, okay, but there is nothing on football. There used to be, the one or the other platform on cricket. Cricket news was covered by those 3-4 newspapers who had a website. There was a platform called Rediff at the time, which was quite big. But otherwise, Indian football wasn't being covered. So I started, covering it. The NFL was running at the time. It was a lot of hype around the NFL. It was the 3rd season of the NFL. There was a lot of hype about Indian football in general. India took part in the Asian Games in Bangkok in 98. Baichung was, the poster boy of Indian football. And then, of course, the whole thing with Baichung moving, India coming to England in 2000. So the organizers asked for my help to come across to the UK, help them organize the tour. I handled the media. I did commentary. Or in the first year, the commentary was actually done by Peter Hutton and Novi Kapadia. And I remember Peter is now the head of sports at Facebook or at Meta. So, and he was
you're
the
saying
guy
a lot of names and it's perplexing me a lot, because you're saying all these big names, which even I'm not sure about, obviously, and you're sort of mentioning because you organized sort of India's tour to England, and I think you also are the main pioneer of the guy who made the Bayern Munich versus India match possible, right? The Baichung Bhutia farewell.
Yeah.
How did you get in that position to organize those matches?
See, if I go in 2000, 2001, 2002, India went on 3 tours to England. So I was always involved in that. I helped them, I guided them. And in 2002, I had the idea, India was supposed to play the under 16 under 17 Asian Championship. A very talented squad, Subrata Pal in goal, Shubhashish Roy Chaudhuri as another goalkeeper. You had Gaurav Mangi Singh, part of that squad. Malanki Suting, Lekini, Chota Mama, Malswama, very talented squad. And then I had, since 2000, Albert Colasso was the secretary, and Albert and I were always sort of exchanging conversations. I had Albert, why don't we try and do a camp for the Indian under-17s in Germany? And let's take the help of the German FA. Let's see, in Hennef, there's a sports school. It's good in and around Cologne. We can play FC Cologne. We can play other teams. That was the first time I organized something on my own with Chris, together with Chris. Got to learn a lot of things, how to organize. We played in FC Cologne with a certain Lukas Podolski playing for them, who I didn't know at the time, but he was part of that squad. India was leading 3-1. And then Podolski came in and scored 2 goals. That India team was very talented, very, very talented. We were very unlucky that we conceded a goal against
the national team coach.
Under 17 was Islam Akhmedov, and in 2002, the first time a certain Stephen Constantine became the coach. So I was also involved in 2001 of sort of helping Stephen get the job. He was coach of Nepal then, and I put him through to Albert, and the whole conversation started, and that was a lot was happening, because in those days there was no structure. If you see, a lot of things have changed over the last 20 years, but in those days, we used to discuss things, used to have a conversation, and then say, hey, how can we take things forward? And in that way, besides doing IndianFootball.com, I started doing management things. I was doing tours. I was organizing things, which made Bayern Munich aware of me, or rather the Bundesliga made themselves aware of me, of Chris. In 2004, we actually did a 75-page report for the Bundesliga on the Indian market, on market entry, market strategy. We've done a lot of things with the Bundesliga over the last 15, 16, 17 years. And in 2005, for the first time, we organized a tour for Bayern Munich, or was involved. This Bayern's B team went to Kolkata to play the IFA Shield. And that was my first involvement.
In Mizoram. Hoffenheim came in Mizoram.
2014, that was also the crazy idea of a certain Lutz Pfannenstiel and mine. Lutz is a very good friend. Lutz is now the general manager of SC St. Louis in the US, the expansion team for next year. And then in 2000, again, Bayern came. 2008, Oliver Kahn, final game in Kolkata, 125,000 people against Mohun Bagan. Most probably the experience of watching a match. I was standing a few meters away from Ottmar Hitzfeld. As a legendary coach at Bayern. And 2010, 2009, the B team returned again. In January, certain Thomas Müller was part of the squad. Nobody knew who Thomas Müller was. Holger Badstuber, certain other players who became professionals and are still Bundesliga players. Biggest thing, of course, 2010, the legends went to play Kolkata, Bayern Munich versus East Bengal, with myself being able to play alongside 5 world champions. So I jokingly said at lunch, I said, you know what, it would be lovely in the city of my parents against the club that we not support, but we are born to support.
That must have been a derby.
Play 2 minutes for Bayern. That was my derby, and I jokingly said that, and I said I jokingly said that at lunch. And the guy who was the coach of the legends, who's a legend himself at Bayern Munich, a guy called Wolfgang Dremmler, just asked, Arunava, you seriously mean that? You want to play for 2 minutes? I said, yeah, just 2 minutes, nothing more, nothing less. That would make my life. And then he said, come at 3 to the team meeting. And I was like, yeah, I'm coming to the team meeting anyway. But then I turned up at the team meeting, and then he said, listen, you've got a new teammate. So I got the number 17 jersey, and at halftime he tells me, start warming up. I said, start warming up? Why now? I'm supposed to play 2 minutes. I'll warm up for 5 minutes, and then and then I warmed up. I came in the 78th minute for Paul Breitner. Himself, the only person to have scored in 2 World Cup finals in 74 and 82. And, it's most probably the experience of my life. And to be able to say that I've played, and I jokingly tell people like Baichung Bhutia or Renedy Singh or jokingly, I tell them, guys, you've played for the Indian national teams. I've played with 6 world champions. Beat that.
That's a flex. What do these European nations, especially you specialize sort of in German football and Bundesliga and DFB, think about India, like especially when you organize these like tours, like under 17 team will come and train, and is there any like sort of benefits, or are you sort of doing a favor for India? Like in terms of like what's this connection? Is it forced? Do they really like feel like, okay, like India is a proper and we can really do something with them, we can help them, we can take something, like we can visit these like Mizoram. I remember because I was studying Roberto Firmino and I was like, oh, he visited Mizoram in 20, like it was crazy. Like, so why do they come? Like, is there any purpose behind it that they're meeting?
See, to say it for the clubs, it's a commercial interest. Let's be honest about it. To come to Asia, to come to the US, it's about commercial interest. We have to be honest that we do not have the playing quality of our players to be able to play in the top leagues. We do not have quality players like the Japanese have, the South Koreans have. You know, we don't have a Heung-min Son of that quality. Let's be honest. You know, or you know, again, Japanese, Iranians. So from that point, is the problem is that even if you know the second an Indian player gets into one of the big teams, into the big, not even big teams, into the big leagues, you know, the craze in India would be insane. But we don't have the talent. You know, I mean, today is the day that Sandesh Jingan has returned to India from Croatia without even having played. Where even a Sandesh Jingan sadly most probably has to realize that you know the standard there is most probably higher.
Because Sandesh Jingan went obviously injured, and he couldn't sort of cope up and find his sort of fitness.
No, he wasn't injured. He got injured there.
Yeah, is that a pattern? Because like even Baichung Bhutia got injured there in Bury FC. I think even Sunil Shetty sort of struggled in Sporting. I'm not sure in terms of injuries. Like, is there that disparity in physicality, or like the demands of training sessions that they just feel so different? Like, like we can't withstand.
The standard is higher. So, you know, even I was talking with Sandesh's agent in the summer about possibilities of moving to Europe. And I always said is that pick and choose the right league, which is, you know, from a physical aspect, suits Sandesh's game. Sandesh is not the most technical player. He comes from his physicality. He's a strong boy. He's you know, he's that warrior. He's that fighter.
Right.
But again, what people forget, even in the Balkans, is that a country like Croatia, very, very talented, gifted players. Look at Modric, look at Rakitic, you know, and you know, even Kovacic the other day with this goal. So you know, so that's the quality we're talking about, and then the physical aspect comes on top of it. So he's given a try. He's not the first, he's not the last. But again, I think you know the generation after, or the generation after, which wants to go to Europe, which has that dream, has to understand that they have to be of better quality to be able to achieve success in Europe.
Because a lot of people say like Gurpreet Singh Sandhu went to step back, but he came improved. Like there was a difference in like in his
Gurpreet was finished when he left in 2014. East Bengal, he was sort of like a finished product, because he is one of the reasons why East Bengal did not win the I-League. You know, he had so many fumbles, he had stupid goals. I remember one which we literally went through him. I think it was against United SC. Again, with all the talent, and again, we're talking about goalkeeping howlers at the moment in the ISL again at the moment. There's a problem. Now, the thing is that Gurpreet, of course, 3 years, he had to fight his way up. At Stabæk, he wasn't number one. He spent a long time on the bench, training, playing even for the B team. But then in the last year, he sort of became number one, even played in the Europa League qualifiers.
Right.
And you know, but again, was a much more mature goalkeeper.
Well, I think I'm definitely drawing a very wrong parallel. I think it's just about you get more experienced. Like you feel more like, okay, I've seen this.
No, again, as a human, I think even Baichung Bhutia, Sunil Chhetri, I think those experiences made those players. Let's put it this way. I think Baichung Bhutia, you know, I spent a lot of hardship in England in those 3 years. But again, Baichung Bhutia became what he is after he came back, and you know, and again, he was already a legend at that time in his 20s. Sunil Chhetri became a lot of it because again, I've known Sunil for a long time. I know the young Sunil, who was a little shy boy, used to sit in the corner, used to sort of be the sort of tag around with Renedy, and Renedy took him to JCT. At JCT, his career kick-started. Came to East Bengal, went here, went there, then went to the US, didn't work, come back, tried it at Sporting, which with friends of mine tried to do. Eric Dyer, for example, was one of his teammates. So that's the standard that you're coping with. And as a striker,
not a favorite example. Eric Dyer, he's very criticized, but
but again, he's a Premiership player. But the thing is that Eric Dyer is, and if a Sunil Chhetri is going into a club where we talk about Cristiano Ronaldo, Joao Felix, whatever the names you want to name, Bruno Fernandes, that is the quality of attacking players that Sporting Lisbon create. And how good Sunil has been for India, he's a legend for India. But that standard at the end of the day, sadly, was too high. Even the B team was too high. But it improved him. I think it made him tougher. And it developed him from a human aspect. I think the biggest development that these guys can pick, even in these hardships, is that they develop as human beings and the leadership qualities get better.
You talk about the standards, right? Obviously, there's very historical reasons behind it. I won't compare Germany and India for a bit, but in terms of football. But why do you think, that's a stupid question, but why do you think these standards, sort of like the Germany standards, the standards of football that Germany have and Indian, what's the basis despite of historical meanings? It started early in Germany and all that thing. What defines those standards? So can it be covered up?
I think you have to think about how the Germans are as a society, how the Germans are in the way they work and they operate, how structured they are in their work. I always say my prime example is always 2000, when a 40-year-old Lothar Matthäus was playing the Euros. Germany and England were knocked out of the tournament. England was celebrating a 1-0 win over Germany, Alan Shearer goal, but both teams were out. Portugal and Romania went on. Germany did a complete introspection and said, listen, we need to completely revamp the system of youth development, have to develop our NL sets, which is the academy system that has been built for Bundesliga teams, and then second Bundesliga teams, third division teams, even fourth division clubs now have these NL sets, Nachwuchsleistungszentren, they're called in Germany. 10 years later, you first saw those results. Thomas Müller is one of those, terrible products of that system. But again, see the mentality. But again, if you look at the quality of players of Mesut Özil, Sami Khedira, all these players who've come through that system, Manuel Neuer, it's top quality. And in 2014, that system gave you the World Cup. And again, the thing is that the Germans now are thinking is that, okay, listen, our system is not good enough. How can we go the next step to evolve further? So now the Federation is building a national center of excellence, or the National Academy, the DFB Academy, as they're saying in Frankfurt, which Germany never had. So they never had a center of excellence. So it's very dependent on the clubs and the and their structure. Now, India, it's a different thing. I think India's biggest problem in football is that that you always or very often talk about the past. And this is a conversation I very often had even 15, 20 years ago with Novi, where I used to always say, Novi, I don't care about the past. I care about today and I care about tomorrow. And success in the 50s and 60s and 70s, nobody cares. We never played a World Cup at the end of the day. Who cares about the Olympics? Seriously, guys. Nobody cares about the Olympics. So we have to do a reality check of how good Indian football supposedly was. And we have to also say, I think hockey is a prime example. The second the Germans, the Dutch, and the Australians came in, made a science out of the sport, brought in artificial turf, it changed the whole complexion. And India's needed like 40 years, 50 years to really catch up again. And only last year at the Olympics, they beat Germany to Brenner Vaughan's bronze medal. Again, I take the example, I think about 15 years ago, the city of Cologne had more hockey astroturfs than the whole of India. And supposedly in India, hockey is the national sport. So these are realities, and it's again, people like PK Banerjee, Chuni Goswami, who've been around, who've done everything and who've been successful. They were running the game. So then the question needs to be asked, guys, what are you doing? Administratively, the AFF now runs like a federation. Again, a lot of people will say they don't, but I would say they do. because they have a professional office, they have a professional management. Do they do everything right? No, they don't. But they've done a lot. So due credit to the federation for that. On the political front, again, let's not get into that conversation. It's a very complex. But the thing is that the AFF structure wasn't there. So that's the problem of this reality, that the structure of Indian football has only been really created over the last 10, 15 years. The National Football League was started in 1996 upon a recommendation of the then FIFA General Secretary, a certain Sepp Blatter, who said, why don't you have a national league? The people were telling him, listen, we have the Kolkata League, we have the Goa League, we have the Durand Cup, we have the IFA Shield, and all like, but where's your national league? Don't you have a national league in India? These are realities when people talk about Indian football, that India still is at a very, very nascent stage of its development.
But that's definitely, there's a sort of loophole between, we talk about the success of 50s and 60s, and India was sort of the Brazil of Asia, whatever people say about that time, and what they won Olympics, and I don't know how much it mattered or not. But I think right now there's a huge disconnect between not a lot of people know about Chunni Goswami, like the current audience of Indian football. They just feel like, oh yeah, there's Sunil Chhetri, we're playing ISL, it's good, we've got this much views on Hotstar, 80K Mohan Bagan, but that's what is happening right now. People feel like, yeah, ISL is taking Indian football, oh, it's commercializing, right? Look at the money coming in and all, but even that definitely is not showing any sort of developing path in terms of the future. It's very short term, because again we it's very disappointing to say it's very young Indian football, because it's very old. So what happened during was this just administrative, not the right people taking decisions, incompetency, seriousness? Because when you talk about Germany sort of disabandoning all their system and trying to open turfs and work on academies, there's a proper culture in Europe, right? They get inspired by England and Italy, they feel like, okay, we need to do something about that. Do you think it's about culture? India was not motivated enough, the people were not sort of pressurized to make these decisions which could sort of enhance a national league, which is so important in maybe 60s, 70s. I know didn't happen.
I think the problem was that India was living in a bubble in those days. 86 was the first World Cup that was broadcast live to India. That's why I think also the craze for Diego Maradona comes from, because that was the first one that a lot of people were able to see live. And the problem was that, again, 50s, 60s, yes, India was very, very successful. But in the 50s and 60s, nobody took in Asia really football seriously. Japan didn't take it seriously. The Koreans didn't take it seriously. The Middle East didn't take it seriously. The Japanese, the Koreans started sort of in the 70s. And that's when, it started to really slowly fall apart again. Was it leadership? Yes, certainly to some extent, because we were happy to do this merry-go-round, that you play in the monsoons in Kolkata, you play the Kolkata League. Okay, fine. And thereafter, rest of the year, we travel around and play tournaments everywhere. It was normal. And this is something, again, I always, not always, I very often discussed it with Novi, because when people talk about these old tournaments, we need to revive tournaments. No, we don't need to revive tournaments. We need to create league structures across India that the pyramid is filled from the ISL to the district level, so that there is a path for a kid from a district in Tamil Nadu or in Kerala or in Bengal or in Mizoram or in Punjab to make it all the way to the top into the ISL. That is what is needed. That is one structure that wasn't there. And even if people talk about the I-League and criticize the ISL, let's be honest, the NFL, the I-League, yes, was running. Has it been successful? In the long run, no. It was just a football tournament happening for the sake of happening. The ISL, again, I was involved in 2013, 2012 when the concept was being worked on. And again, there were certain ideas which I didn't like, but again, I think from the Indian context, you need it. It's like the playoffs and the semis and the finals. I'd rather have a league champion at the end of it, because that is the real champion, because if you win 20 league games, or at the end of 20 league games, you're top of the table, or 34, 38, that means you deserve to be champions. But again, I understand from an Indian context, you need the masala, you need the tamasha a little bit to galvanize the crowds.
Right, definitely.
But the problem is, again, also with the roadmap that the AFC and FIFA have created for India, without which India was going into chaos because the I-League clubs were simply fighting for something. And again, I was working in the background of that as well. In trying to make them understand is that you need to have one unified system, one pyramid. The ISL has got money in it, which the I-League doesn't. In the I-League, there are teams playing, spending 5, 4, 3, 2 crores on their teams, struggling to put it together. While in the ISL, teams are spending 40, 50, 60 crores. Right? So that means that a lot more money is coming into the system. The problem is, as long as the pyramid is not there in a proper way, there is no proper structure, then the money cannot be, can't go through the system downwards, so that, at the grassroots level, you develop talent, which then goes into the youth system, and from the youth system via maybe local leagues, the second division, the I-League, can go into the ISL. The pyramid needs to be there. Besides, I think the bigger problem, in India is the level of coaching at youth level. I think that needs to be the real concern, is why when I see an under-23 team, when I see a national team, that there are players playing for India today that don't know the basics sometimes. The coaches have to work on the basics, and that's something that Stephen Constantine.
But the coaches complain they don't get game time, they don't get training sessions. That's the whole, especially from Delhi. I sort of worked in the senior division, the Delhi League, which happened as an assistant coach, and we didn't have grounds. We couldn't book grounds. We had training session, we had 4 training sessions pre-tournament, and we went in. We changed systems 6 times. We played a false nine. We did a lot of stuff there, but ultimately there was no sort of consistency. And I'm not talking about my team. Every team. I talk about the best teams in Delhi. They were struggling.
But again, but my question then is, if you've got 4 sessions and you've got a team, find a simplistic system, because if you are asking your players to play multiple systems, this is, again, even with Pep Guardiola, I've seen that at Bayern. At Bayern, players were struggling in the first week when Pep Guardiola came.
Really sorry,
they didn't have a clue what he was wanting. He wants them to.
Yeah, but the problem is, the players we coached, they didn't have game time too. They were so newbies in this, I don't know, I've only played 5, 11.
Yeah, but then if you're playing 11-a-sides football in the Delhi League, and you're trying to at least get a result, see what kind of material you have, and then play a basic system. Play a 4-4-2 or play a 4-2-3-1 or play a 3-5-2 or 3-5-1-1, I don't know. So again, whatever the players are happy with. Because I know when the first coaches in the ISL tried to implement a three-man back line, all teams were suffering because Indian players were not used to playing a 3-man back line. They were always used to play a 4-man back line. And I remember when I used to travel regularly with Bob Houghton and the team, Bob Houghton used to say, listen, why am I playing a 4-4-2? Because it's a very simplistic system. I say I've got 4 men at the back. I've got 2 wingers, mainly on one side, ideally Renedy, on Anthony Pereira on the other side, or a Stephen Dias. Let them run. Let them get the ball in. I've got Baichung. I've got Sunil up front. I've got NP Pradeep, who's sort of my Steven Gerrard, who's running up and down. I've got another one in Climax, Lawrence, who's covering. Keep it simple. That this is what annoys me when I hear an Igor Steamer talking about tactics and this possession football and all. Listen, your team can't play possession football. Don't talk about something your team cannot play.
But how do you spark a change that let's try?
It has to happen at youth level. If you're trying to get senior level players at the national team to learn something which they don't know, you're doing a wrong job. Sorry.
Definitely.
And you realize this season with 4 instead of 5 foreigners, that these defensive mistakes have gone up dramatically because you're suddenly playing only with one defensive.
One goals are good. People saying that goals are coming.
Goals are coming, which is good. But again, you see the goalkeepers. Again, why are there so many goalkeeping blunders? Because they're getting so many balls on shots on goal.
Without a doubt. And we expect sort of these goalkeepers to do modern stuff, especially with Spanish coaches in flux. And we feel Amrinder would sort of help in the build-up and all. But the whole question was, because I was talking about this disconnect about the previous generation. And I don't want to sort of dwell on that past, but I feel like our fans motive, because I was reading Novi sir book, and it was like Ambedkar Stadium mein, there was this old Delhi ka crowd us time pe. They used to watch Mohammedan, they used to be passionate about these clubs, jo stories thi unki jo bhi, and Muslim people, and like all those sort of religion tribulations, whatever happened there. And that disconnected completely visible. Like the modern football fans, United fans, Madrid fans, they don't care about Indian football that much. And ISL though tried to commercialize it by bringing them to the stadium, didn't last for long, especially in a state like Delhi. Nobody cared for Delhi Dynamos after a while, especially after having Roberto Carlos and those football legends. People came one, watched. Even I came with my friends. Like I brought my friends. Okay, let's watch one match. Let's do that. And they were like, bro, never. Please don't bring us ever again. They felt like it was so boring. They felt there was no crowd. Like the football was.
See, I stop you there. I think the biggest
Right.
problem is that you're used to television football. And I remember I watched, when was my last Premier League game? About 2 years back, 2.5 years back. Yeah, 2.5 years back. Tottenham against City. It was pathetic. But if you watch the same game, the highlights on television, it looks decent. It didn't look that bad. So the reality is also that this is a generation which is used to television football. I mean, even if you look at the ISL, the television production now is world class. You know, if you watch it on ground again, and that's how good is a game, and that's a general problem that you'll have with football. It's the way it's packaged, and you're used to now to Premier League and La Liga. And again, it's I for example, I don't like watching Premier League live in stadiums. I don't like the atmosphere. I don't like the whole getup of the thing. I'm most probably I'm too German and too a child of the Bundesliga, because I like the atmosphere in German stadiums is much more better, much better.
Is it toxic in England? Like the fans are abusing it all, like more.
That is not a problem. I mean, that happens in Germany as well. I think it happens everywhere. I mean, if you want to go to the abuse, go then to an East Bengal Momagan match. Then you'll know what real abuse is. Then your Punjabi galis are even are sweet. so from that perspective, no, I think German fans are more creative. If you see with their tifos and the way how they start the games, in their chanting, in the way it's much more creative in the way they support their teams. And I think that is what I like. And even and if I look Dortmund, if I look Schalke, if Cologne, for example, FC Köln is most probably one of the crazy ones. They were called the Carnivals Club, and you should see FC Cologne in one of the matches around Carnival, or when Carnival starts on the 11th, or when Carnival really is in February and March. It is insane. You most probably will think, okay, this is not one of the biggest clubs in the world, but atmosphere-wise, it is. I tell you a secret, I once took Kushal Das to a game, and we went to Dortmund on a Saturday, we went to Cologne on a Sunday, and I hope I can say this. He said he preferred the atmosphere on a Sunday in Cologne over the atmosphere in Dortmund, where Dortmund already is world class. So this is something that I feel, and it doesn't have to be the highest level. I also in India, of course, yes, I do like to watch I-League and ISL, but in Kolkata, for example, when I do go, I also once in a while watch lower level football just to see what's the standard, how are they playing, what are they playing, and it's very worrisome to see that a lot of kids now watch television, try to be all Cristiano Ronaldo's and Messi's, which I think has been a bad influence on Neymar's has been rather a bad influence on football, rather than focusing on their basics and trying to play their own best and try to be as good as they can. And do the basics first.
I think the whole system has been so flawed. Like Indian football has been so attacked in terms of firstly cricket game. Like 1984 World Cup we won, and now everybody wanted to become Kapil Dev. Now then Sachin. So it just was like, okay, now cricket. Everybody's like, even I'm obviously you were born in Germany. I used to play cricket like when I was like young. We're like, we just got blinded to the fact, oh, there's a sport called football, and the Indians play football. And even like that has sort of happened. I was watching this game, this Tamchon tournament, which happened in Ambedkar Stadium 2 years ago. And there was a club in Northeast. I don't remember the name, SSFC. I don't remember the name. They filled the Ambedkar Stadium. I mean, like they sort of had a lot of audience, and they traveled from Northeast to support their club. One of my friend experienced there's a tournament called Badusa Cup, like very like old tournament in Northeast. And he was like,
In
the whole
Assam.
stadium is Assam, right? And he was like, the whole stadium was packed. So we definitely have audience. And obviously, I'm taking an example of a state which is so football oriented, obviously. Like,
Take another one. I think a good example is Kolhapur. When they have their local league matches
yeah.
in Kolhapur, you have 25, 30,000 people in that. That's that V-shaped stadium. Looks very awkward, that stadium, but that stadium is full, Look at in Mizoram, the Mizoram Premier League, or in Manipur, the local leagues. You have fans coming. The Kolkata League, this year without East Bengal, without Mohun Bagan, even then, the interest was huge. There is interest in football. The problem is that we always sort of gear up towards the top level football. I think we need to try and promote football in which is second and third tier, which is, so we people can see. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities via streams, via social media these days, and also give these players an opportunity to really make it from the bottom to the top. And that is those things are interlinked, and that's very, very important. That what I call the pyramid, I think, is the most important thing that needs to settle itself in the next few years. Again, with the ISL, the top league, the I League, the second division, but how then is my connect to my state leagues or my city leagues? Can I create a regional league, and play all these leagues year through? A lot of clubs, leagues play. Again, Delhi is a good example. I don't know how you've played now the Delhi senior division. Now you're playing the Delhi Premier League. I don't know why you're playing multiple leagues. Why can't you implement a league? We are playing 7-8 months.
In I think a month they've got 9 matches. Not a month. In like 20 days they've got 9 matches. Like, it's just jammed up completely. I was having a discussion with a guy like who plays for a club. I won't name the club, Delhi. He's the captain of the Delhi senior team, Santosh team. And he sort of stated he was not happy with what has been happening in his treatment as a player. Like, he feels like he's 27. He feels like, like, I'm the captain of the national team. Oh, sorry, the Delhi senior team. And I don't feel any club contracting me. Like, there's no long-term thinking. Everybody's like, okay, this season we put this much money in. We've buy a foreign striker, the African striker, and we sort of get the result. We sort of try to make a profit, try to get something. There's no youth. There's nothing like youth academy, no structure. When you talk about second division, third division, I think it has to come with the concept of long-term thinking. Like Germany didn't went for like, okay, like we're gonna kill the next World Cup. They prepared, okay, like we're gonna do this and this. Like, they sort of are ready to fail and explore the whole concept of, okay, like,
but you know what your problem? No, the biggest problem, I think, is that from a commercial standpoint, there is no entity in Indian football from a club perspective, from a franchise perspective, who's making money. Everyone is losing money. So as long as Indian football is commercially not viable, you can't ask for mid to long-term planning. Some of them are trying. But again, let's say, guys who are trying to do a good job, let's say FC Goa are doing a good job. Suddenly you realize your coach has this clause and you have to sell your coach to another team. But again, FC Goa is doing a lot when it comes to the development team. They've got the youth teams. Goa is well structured in that way. You have Bangalore who's trying. But again, Bangalore now, the owners also have an IPL team. So the question is, are they going to keep spending on football? Because football is even if it's just 10, 20, 30 crores losing, I think, or Jindal said last season, 25 crores is what he's losing a year. In cricket, you're spending thousands of crores, but you're recovering your costs. You're not making a loss. And that is the biggest drawback, I think, for football, that at all levels, people who are spending money on the sport, who are trying to get money via sponsors and via other entities, are losing money, are bleeding money. And as long as that is not changed, I think it's going to be very, very difficult, very, very difficult for people who are in a semi-pro or amateur level to think mid to long term. Because for them, again, it's about, okay, let me see what I do this season. About next year, I'll think next year, because I then have to see how much money I have. What is my aim in the league? What are the others spending? Let's see what I do. So therefore, this long-term thinking is not there in the system.
How can it be developed? Like you talked about, like having a pyramid, and I think that's one of the main answers about it. How do you is India taking any steps progressive steps in developing that pyramid? Like obviously we got this roadmap. Like people question whether it be followed. Like a lot of people say like yeah 2-3 साल भी हाँ उसके बाद देखते हैं नहीं होगा. Like how do you feel like the steps are about this?
I think the roadmap is being followed because it's something that FIFA and AFC put in, and they've not just put it in, but they've actually put some pressure on it. On the other side, India has been able to get an AFC Champions League slot through this. That is the top level of development. On the other side, what the AFF has done quite well over the last 4 or 5 years, last 2 years out because of the pandemic, is install grassroots baby leagues and the youth leagues. That has been completely wiped out by the pandemic now. So the problem is, from that perspective, is that your development angle that you were actually focusing on and you're doing good work at the time was working with Round Glass. So we're setting up the whole project in Punjab. And so I know how the under 13, 15 and 18 leagues were being set up and done. That again, and the pandemic isn't over tomorrow. So the question is, how long will this last? So I think, how are we going to get young people to play the sport, to play competitive games, and enhance the standard? I think that's a tough ask, because we will most probably lose 2 years of kids due to this, who have opted either for studies or have opted for another sport, or most probably have stopped playing, not only just football, but most probably playing sport.
Without
so that's the thing. The bridging the gap is, I think, that is the key. You have to work at the top. The ISL is your top league. Changes have been made. The league has been expanded. You will have most probably in 23, if not in 23, most probably in 24, you'll have promotion. Give it another 2-3 years thereafter, you'll most probably have relegation. So that on that side, things are working. On the other side, grassroots is the key. But the problem with grassroots, I feel, is, again, as long as the pandemic is there, it's a bit of a problem.
If you draw parallels with Germany, because I definitely want to come to this question. I'm not like, obviously, as a guy who knows how DFB works, the decisions they take, I'm not obviously stating a comparison, but how much of a difference is there? And obviously there's cultural, historical differences, but is there some basic intricacies you notice, like, okay, like this is where Indian football is completely flawed?
See, the DFB most probably is, at the moment, it's the biggest sporting federation in the world. But if you look at it, how many presidents have left the DFB over the last 5-6 years, it's most probably the worst run German federation.
Interesting.
So from that perspective, I would think that AFF most probably is even better than the DFB, with all its problems. So it's how you look at things. I mean, the DFB has a lot of issues internally. Again, they're still searching for a new president. German football is strong because the club structure is so strong. So I think that is something, is that also in India, there is this misconception that the AFF has to do everything for you. No. Football development around the world is mainly driven by the clubs. And the clubs aren't paid any money for this or for that. I mean, Indian clubs are being pampered. You get the AFF is paying for all the I-League teams, all their costs to stay in 5-star hotels in Kolkata to play. Are you joking me? That should be your own homework. If you're playing I-League, I mean, Rajasthan United to me is a joke. How can such a club play in the I-League? They don't seem to be prepared at all. Now the rumor is, oh, listen, we have to spend more. We're not going to do it. Then don't play the league. Even if you win it, then let a team which wants to play this league and who is capable of playing this league from financial standpoint. This is a problem in Indian football, that there are people who are trying to, I will somehow manage. It's, again, I understand you're idealists, you're trying to do something for football, but you're harming football more than you're helping. And that's, but no one will talk about this. No one will say this into the face of these people. I think that is the biggest problem, that the realities of Indian football, the problems of Indian football, everyone knows them. No one says it. Biggest problem. And that is the difference, I think, between Germany and India.
Because everybody questions AIFF nowadays. It's fashionable to be a rebel. It's like, okay, like, oh, because like Rajasthan did the same, right? They were like, nah, AIFF did solve the contractual things, whatever. And we sort of had to play.
It's not the AIFF's fault. You screwed up. The rules were known before the league. You should have had your team ready before you went into the second division qualifiers, into the I-League qualifiers. You did not do your homework. Don't blame the AIFF for it. The AIFF, especially the I-League department, Sunanda Dhar and his team do a brilliant job. Let me state this officially. These guys are running a bubble league with resources, with manpower, which is, you can't compare. In the ISL, you've got X times more of that. So you guys have not done your homework. Don't blame it on other people. I mean, that's, sorry, it's stupid. Right. The AFF, yes, and not publicly, but privately, the AFF will say that if they do things wrong, they'll say that. But the thing is, it's not about saying that the AFF is wrong. Again, the AFF is being blamed for everything, for referees, for this and that. Is anyone questioning in the ISL the behaviors of players and coaches? I had a Twitter spat last year with Robbie Fowler on that. He blocked me after it because I questioned Robbie Fowler's behavior on the bench of East Bengal, where I said, you do not have the integrity to be the coach of East Bengal club because you're abusing. I can hear via the mics English swear words in 90 minutes. It's just one gali after the other. You're picking up fights. You're telling people, oh, listen, the referee's done this. Listen, there were fouls where your players were sent off, which were literally genuine, and you instigated people to say that those fouls were not genuine. Are the referees making mistakes? Yes. Listen, but that's a problem even in the Premier League or in the Bundesliga, even with VAR. You're not helping. So-called class, the top players of the ISL are so unfair in their behavior. And they're lucky not to be thrown out every match day. Top players like Hugo Bumu, Edu Bedia, even an Ahmed Jahu. All of these guys could get a red card in every match because they've got all these things where they're doing acting, playing, lashing out at others. You're not getting a red card.
It's very difficult to scapegoat a referee, right? Like, oh, yeah, referee mistake.
The referee, again, with everything, why is the coach fired when the team doesn't perform? Because you can't throw out a whole team. It's the same thing. Are the referees doing mistakes? Okay, they're doing tons of mistakes. Let's be very, very clear. But referees can't improve overnight. That will take 4 or 5 years for the next generation of referees to be better equipped. Will VAR change things? Again, the other day, I'd say the example to me is Sadio Mane against Asuri Quetta. That's a red card in 10 seconds.
Is that
right?
Is that really a red card? That's debatable.
Listen, if you say that's debatable, first mistake.
Nah.
Sorry, I'll be very brutal.
No, without
that is something. Again, also it's like when is the VAR used? When is the VAR not used? It's look at the Man City versus Arsenal thing, where I think the VAR and the referees got it right. But again, yes, if you say Odegaard went down and Ederson touched him, whatever, blah blah blah, whatever the Arsenal fans want to say. You can say that, but if the referee's decision is right, why get involved? While the other decision, sorry, Granit Xhaka, typical Xhaka idiot incidents.
Typical Arsenal stuff. Throwing it away.
So you blame it on them. So the point is also technology, even in football, VR can help you, but it will not solve your problems. I mean, then you have to have robots and you have to have sort of, full mapping where an AI sort of say is deciding for you, and an AI will never be able to decide because it can't understand emotions.
Yeah, you might need to consult Elon Musk in that. But
maybe.
I think there's definitely a big problem for accountability. People don't hold themselves accountable. They're very easy to pat fingers at others, like Rajasthan ne bola ki unki galti. Like even a lot of Indian coaches like we did the D license, but we don't know where to go. Like we don't know where to get jobs. Like people like kitne sare log D license kar rahe hain aaj ke time pe, like especially like from what I see, and they're just sitting idle. Obviously it could be COVID, definitely, but mostly nobody's sort of apne efforts se trying to approach somebody, send mail somebody. Like nobody's doing that. Everybody wants things served at them. But how do you change that nature? Because I definitely think this is catered a lot in Germany because there's a proper structure and culture around it. But like that's where my main thing is, like why should they even hold themselves accountable? Because the culture is not there.
I tell you two things. I was running Mumbai City as the CEO of Mumbai City FC in the first season of the ISL. I sat on the draft. We didn't have a coach on it. So on the drafts, I was sitting. And I think with my technical director, Nishan Mehra, from an Indian player's perspective, I think we put the best squad possible together. And I stick to that till date in 2014, that we had the best squad together. Then we got the foreigners in and everything, and we tried to build on it. We got Peter Reid as a coach. Somehow the other things didn't work. We had problems here and there. And at the end of the season, I said to myself, listen, I'm not happy. I wanted to win. I came here to win the title. I think that we had the best squad and we should have won it. I resigned. And I said, thank you very much. I'm going back to Germany. I was for myself accountable. And I see that with no one, to be very honest. I'm very blunt to that. No one in that system is starting with the president of the AFF downwards, continuing with the Indian national team coach, with coaches, with officials in the Indian Super League, in the I-League. Nobody's accountable. And that's the biggest problem, that if we don't have that, and if we also don't bring in better quality people to run the game, this cycle that we're in, it's going to be nice. Yeah, it's running, it's happy, but it's not going anywhere. And when it comes to players or coaches, I find it very funny when, especially on Instagram, I get a lot of messages from people saying, listen, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that. What I even think is, like, a simple Google search, you could have found out the basics of what you're looking for. Or 17-year-olds saying, how do I get into the ISL? Where you think, okay, never heard about you, never will most probably hear about you. And I bluntly tell them, I said, listen, work your way up through the system. How do I do it? Sir, help me. I said, no, I don't. Listen, how many, again, I'm not social service to help 17-year-olds to get into the ISL, because you're nowhere near the ISL. Or 15, 16-year-olds saying, listen, can I get a trial with the Indian junior team? The Indian junior teams have their scouting systems. If you're good enough, you don't find them, they will find you.
Right now, definitely
that is another problem.
In Indian football, try to build connections rather than competency. They try to feel like, oh, we need to talk to this guy, he'll settle this for us. Like, that's the whole culture, which is very deteriorating, not helping any outlookers, sort of radical thinking, which sort of is helping anybody. We've talked a lot about a lot of, you also ranted, actually. If you don't think, you definitely have ranted. Tell me some beautiful stories about, like, you obviously had this connection with, you're throwing stuff which is like surreal to me. Like, oh, I was there, Mumbai City, man. How can it be casual? So I just need a breather in terms of what have you, like, you've got a lot of stories. Let's start with Bob Houghton. How was his India like your insights of sort of working in that India? I'm definitely going to sort of force you to sort of draw these differences. Okay, at that time I used to feel Indian football like this. Now it's like this. Like, Bob Houghton is India, the culture around it.
I think it's a different generation. I think, if I say, I take an example. I was there on the 30th of October when India played Kyrgyzstan in Fujairah in the under-23s Asian qualifiers. And I know most of the boys in that squad since their under 15 days, when they used to travel with Nikolai Adam here to Germany, play matches. I think 3 of them said hello, sir. I don't care about the sir. They said hello. They had the earpods on. They were listening to their music. They were not bothered about the rest. The old generation, and it doesn't have to be me, it can be anyone. They would have stopped. They would have chatted. And then they would have gone. And these guys are in a bubble. I don't understand that. It's like, hey, it's not about me. It's that anyone outside of the bubble that you can actually have a conversation with, and you're going into an ISL bubble after this, why not having a conversation? This is the weirdest thing that I feel, that there's this generational shift of, and you realize that all of them, again, I'm bad at this. I spoke a little bit with Dheeraj and then realized, listen, that was the hero of the game. You should have actually clicked a picture with him. Should have actually, yeah, but wasn't on my mind. That's why my social media most probably is as bad as it is. But if I look at, I've built relationships, friendships, not relationships, friendships. If I say, especially Renedy is like a brother, right? Renedy Singh is my best friend in this ecosystem. And if I, for example, I'm very happy to see him now coach
in his first game.
SC's
Sort
Bengal.
of compacted the whole team. It was nice.
And Renedy is most probably one of the most talented in that whole generation of coaches. Not only him, but it's it's a Mehraj, Udin Wadu, it's a Clifford Miranda. There's Sami Naik and Tempo. So there are quite a few of them were there. Gauramangi Singh there with Richard Hood. Under Bob, it was like a family. It was more of a family, and you became part of the family. Even if you were initially at the periphery, you became part of the family. Now it's sometimes too professional. There is. If I see, I was in Doha when India played this 0-0, and after the match, I went with certain people to the Indian team hotel, and we had dinner together, and then had a long chat with certain Croatian coaches who work in Doha, and Igor and other people about football. But I see a certain distance between the national team coach and the players. And again, certain coaches deal in that way, but I feel it's also a generational thing. I saw that in Mumbai City as well. Where even I used to, talk to regularly to certain players, in a certain setting. With Nicolas Anelka, there was a certain way of talking to Nico. With Freddie Ljungberg, Freddie was a certain way. But for example, Subroto Pal and Noah, since Subroto's been a 15-year-old kid, so Subroto and I have a sort of a different relationship. So it's a little different. It's again because, of course, yes, I come from a media background, and I think I'm a good communicator. I'm a good orator as well. But I've been very lucky that I've actually been into all aspects of the game, and I say that I'm most probably one of the few around the world of global football who can say that I'm actually in that way an all-rounder. Is there an area within football?
You also had
yes,
a cap.
I've played. I've even had coached. I've coached in the past. Don't have badges. Don't need them most probably. But so I've done everything. So I do. I think I take a holistic approach about this. But if you allow me, if you bring in an Arunava Chaudhuri, you have to allow an Arunava Chaudhuri to run it his way. I say that clear. It doesn't matter who the owner is, you have to run it my way. Because I think that with my knowledge and with my understanding, that we can be successful. And I jokingly say that in 2014, it might have been better if I had actually been the coach of our team, because I actually put the team together. So it actually was my team rather than the team of my coaches, and knowing the characters and knowing, if I see players like Lalrindika Ralte, who I loved watching, was technically of his generation the best player. If I see the hard work that players like JJ used to put in, these players now are somewhat gone. They're sitting at home in Mizoram and sitting with their family and not playing anymore. And that is the sad part. But on the other side, I see the new generation. Again, I've seen now the current, the younger ones, and the under 15s, under 16s, under 17s who are now playing. It was great to see the development in a player like Dheeraj in that tournament. See a Suresh or an Amarjeet. Right. So that's good to see. But it's Indian football used to be a lot more family-like, I would say, because it was not so much about professional.
Like obviously these.
No, it was about. No, it was about. It wasn't about that much about professionalism, about money, all of these things. All of these things. It's when in 2000, let's say, if I went with the Indian team, the Indian team didn't have a kit partner, and someone just organized stuff from Adidas, and then someone said, listen, tomorrow we'll make a jersey. So what jersey are you gonna make? What color do you think? So we then decided, sitting there, said, listen, why don't you make normally they wear blue, but we're in England, so why don't you make a white jersey, and you make a nice collar with the India flag on it and all that. crazy thing. I mean, those days nothing was there. The team didn't have a media officer. There was no media interaction per se. I remember that there was no WhatsApp or whatever. So Indian journalists used to spend money to call to the UK to find out what is happening and all. So it's those days were different. Those days were different, and I don't want to miss those days. I now most probably sound like an older man now, but but it was different, and it was more pure, I would say, more natural than it is now.
Right. I'm trying to draw parallels with my team and Delhi FC. Like Delhi FC is like the Ranjit Bajaj team, right? We face them, and it's a proper team. Like they got operation manager 2, 3. They got assistant coaches. Like, and we had only 2 people. Like me and Abhishek sir. If you know him, right? We used to have a chat in clubhouse, and we were a family. We were technically a family, and we were sort of like doing stuff like kit abhi aa rahi hai game se pehle, and contract nahi kya ho, like NOCs, pata nahi, all this stuff is emergencies. And वहाँ पे, like I noticed Delhi FC, they were not didn't look much of a like a bond. It like हाँ, like groups काफी divided था, right? Does it have to do with कि extend professionalism sort of kill करता वो feeling of that randomness of that family thing, or does it like generational sort of shift हर जगह?
I think it's one side. Surely there's a generational shift. I think there's too much of gadgets around. I think we used in 2000 there was no that much of PlayStation culture and all that stuff. We used to actually sit down in the evenings and chat. I remember there used to be a group with Renedy, with Khalid Jamil, myself, and Jules Alberto, and we used to talk football tactics, or or we used to watch football and then talk about tactics, this, that, everything, which is very, very interesting. Nowadays, you eat, you go back to your room, and then they're playing PlayStation, or they're doing social media. They're video calling someone.
Right.
There are too many options in life, and the problem is that there was, I think, a certain naivety which is sort of gone. I think again, professionalism is good; it's needed, but certain things do get lost in that.
Certain basic generic questions. Who's the best Indian coach as of now, right now, according to you?
If I go by the older generation, I would say Derek Pereira. Amongst the younger ones, I would think, and I hope he proves me right, it's going to be Renedy.
I'm curious about Khalid Jamil, because he's sort of that conventional 4-4-2. He's always been that guy, to get clean sheets, and with Mumbai he won the I League, Aizawl he won the league. He's done certain interesting things in football. If you look back and map his career, how's he like in terms of knowledge and I'm in competition? I don't know.
Khalid is Khalid, or Khalid Bhai, we rather would say. He is he's highly intelligent. His football intelligence is quite there. I mean, don't forget that he was born in Kuwait. He used to train under Alain Giresse over there, French Euro winner from '84. Was a midfield general, a midfield marshal. So he's always had that understanding. The problem was, I think, that I would have liked to see Khalid Jamil at a big budget club with attacking options. Because Khalid Jamil so far has always been with smaller teams, where, again, even though Mumbai FC wasn't, so to say, a small team, because you had in the background the Z Group, but on the other side, they were never big spenders in the I League. Aizawl, of course, was a dream run. And even at Northeast United, he has to work compared to other teams on a shoestring budget. So I would like to see Khalid once with a team which has I don't know, with star strikers and creative midfielders, if he would change his game and suddenly would play differently. I don't know. That would be interesting to see. But I think his defensive unit is built on the fact that he has always had these teams with fighting units.
Surely he knows how to get the best out of given resources, like in terms of limited resources. And yes. I think it definitely is a different, because I can't draw parallels with Carlo Ancelotti and Unai Emery. I mean, Unai Emery obviously worked with PSG, and he's obviously a great coach, no doubt. But when he worked with the egos, talk about these big players, Mbappe, Neymar, Cavani, he struggled. And now with Villarreal, he's playing beautiful football. It definitely has to, you bifurcate coaches sense mein ki certain can only manage, I don't think so.
It has to
didn't do that
club.
well Everton may, right? He was average, but Madrid may he's killing it because he knows how to manage these players and all.
Yeah, but even at Bayern he failed. His man management at Bayern was pathetic.
Was it? I'm not sure about his tenure. Was it complaining? Players complained about him? What was the thing there?
Yes, they went at the end to the club management and spoke that we want to change in manager. And the problem was, of course, if Ancelotti comes after Pep Guardiola, I think Pep Guardiola is a very, very demanding coach and but looks at every aspect of the game. And Ancelotti is more of the nice uncle, and and he takes care of you, and he's sort of he's there for you when you need him. And that is always, and again, it's really interesting to see. For example, I think an interesting experiment at the moment is Ralf Rangnick at Manchester United, because I think that if Ralf Rangnick fails at Manchester United, then it to me means that this club at the moment, this team at the moment, is untrainable. It cannot be coached because you've had the Van Gaals, David Moyes, you've had Mourinho, now Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You've got all different kinds of models you've tried with this club, with this team, and it's not worked. And that is that, and that happens. It's like, why is Mainz so good in bringing up coaches? They've had Klopp, they've had Tuchel, now they have Bo Svensson, who's most probably the next one in that line. It just works for them somehow. So it's again, Bayern Munich with Niko Kovac didn't work. It worked under Flick, and now Nagelsmann is taking it literally to the next level.
Is it about reference points? Because if you talk about Ralf Rangnick, he is sort of in modern history of German football, he is the reference point of, we say Klopp, Tuchel, Nagelsmann. And if I again sort of draw parallels with Indian football, do you think there's enough reference points in terms of that much competency? Okay, everybody wants to become like Syed Abdul Rahim, obviously at that time, if I sort of look at anybody, because I think that's also missing in Indian football.
I think the problem is if you don't have that, because your problem is your coaches are mainly foreigners. So your top coaches, not only in the ISL but also in the I League, most of the coaches are foreigners. The problem is there's been a generational gap. I remember, when was this, 2005, 2004, when Derek Pereira and Savio Madeira did the AFC Pro license here in Germany at the sports school in Hennef. So I remember meeting them, and there was Sundarajan, a coach from Southern Railway, and Herring Schampling, then coach of Lajong, who were nowhere near the I-League in those days. Those four were the first Indian coaches to get the pro license. But it has, it's taking quite a while for these coaches to take the next level, because there has been a trust over the last decade in foreign coaches rather than Indian coaches. And I think the Indian coaches also need to pick themselves up and be of a higher standard, of a higher level, to be able to compete, and also understand the fact, which they most probably will not like, but there is this factor of respect that Indian players have towards coaches. And many Indian players have more respect to foreign coaches than the Indian coaches. I don't know why. So that's been, again, that's what I've seen also with the national team. I've traveled with the national team. I've seen Indian coaches, and I've had more the feeling that the foreign coaches have worked better, especially if you look at Bob and Stephen Constantine, than the Indian coaches in between.
Who's the best Indian player as of now, young, according to you?
Currently, at this moment,
I mean, come on, there's many. I mean, you can talk about Apuya. When he's sort of that.
I would like to talk about Apuya, because I think that Apuya could be a very, very key player. I also like at the moment what I'm seeing of Alisson Colasso, because I feel that he's seems to be coming of age.
Right.
I like a Sana Singh, who doesn't seem to be sort of a one-season wonder and then disappear. We've had this a lot over the last 4 or 5 years, that players have had 1 or 2 good seasons. So those would be the ones, amongst them. But I on the other hand,
this generation, I mean, not pleased. Are you hopeful? I don't know. I mean,
I think the potential is there, but I would have expected a little bit more from the generation of the under-17 World Cup.
Right.
I think if I look at the whole squad, again, Dheeraj is now playing well. Nawaz is in goal. Gill suddenly is playing at Blasters.
Right.
But Amarjeet is struggling. Suresh at the moment is also not as good as he was last season. Aniket seems to be maybe getting the curve. Rahim Hali might be getting the curve. And and it's interesting, Apuya is another one who wasn't that good in those days. He was not a regular. He was just more of a substitute, but he seems to be making the cut. But the others, yeah, I think then they need to show us a little bit more.
Even Anwar Ali has joined, Goa. It'd be interesting to see how he sort of like revives, because a lot of people quoted like he could be that ball carrier Indian football team may like ab hoga build up. People like ab hoga build up. We got a ball playing center back. But that's interesting. Tell me more about Novi Kapadia, sir, because you obviously had a fair share of experience with him. And because the one thing which I remember, and I was watching this podcast 420 grams, right? And they were talking about, he remembered everything. Like he remembered everything about any FA Cup final he watched or any Duran Cup. He remembered everything by word. And even you, like you're throwing out so many names, you remember everything. Is it a case of journalism? Is it a case of your company with Novi Kapadia? Like how has he been in terms of your reference? I think he must have been a reference point for you, right? In terms of that.
So Novi, I remember in '99, we were wanting to build a historical database of Indian football online on indianfootball.com. And I remember I spoke to, I was in Kolkata actually. I was one of those evenings, was sitting at the press club, talking to Dhiman Sarkar and Amitabh Dasrama, and both of them said, listen, why don't you get hold of the Durant Almanac, the yearbook? I said, what Durant yearbook? You don't know about this? No. So then I think it was ADS. I think it was Amitabh. I think ADS then send a message to Novi. Said, Novi, you're helping indianfootball.com, but Arunava doesn't know about you doing a yearly book with all the stats. And then I remember Amitabh gave me his copy and Novi sent him another copy. So that was actually the basis of our sort of creating a database of Indian football in the background on the website, and on the finals of the big tournaments, and then we sort of Indian national team matches, all those kind of things. And I first met Novi in 2001 in Bangalore. So I had this crazy thing that India was playing UAE. So I actually flew over from Germany to Bangalore to watch them play at the Kantirava. And Noel De Lima had convinced me to fly over. So he was, Noel De Lima, another crazy one, who was a patron of Vasco Sports Club, but was also the original commentator with Novi of the National Football League in the 90s. And Novi, and then we sat down in Bangalore and talked about Indian football. Novi was very vocal. I met why am I talking 2001? No, I met Novi the first time at Fulham. Sorry, what am I saying? In 2000. Fulham versus India, where one of my heroes, Karl-Heinz Riedler, 1990 World Cup winner for Germany, scored 2 goals against India. And we then met at the clubhouse. Mohammed Al-Fayed was then the president. And then I remember Noel coming in and shouting why Sukhvinder Singh was the coach. So it's like, Soki, why are you playing? Who was he playing? I think it was Jagjit Singh or Daljeet. I think it was Jagjit Singh. Why are you not playing the young Khalid Jamil? You should play Khalid Jamil. And he came in, and then thereafter I got introduced to Novi and to Peter Hutton, and that was the first conversation. But the first long, and then we had a few conversations on that trip. But then the first real one and the in-depth conversation was in Bangalore with Noel and with Novi, because it was a historic night. India won actually 1-0 against the UAE, and it was actually close to qualifying for the first time ever for the final round of the Asian qualifiers for a World Cup. And then we've met over the years. We've done commentary together a few times, or worked together for Z Sports on the I-League or NFL in those days, or we did the Duran Cup final. So I actually, when I did my sort of obituary for Novi a few weeks ago, I actually picked out one of the pieces. It was a final between Mahindra and Churchill, which was, if I honestly, no disregard to the current commentator combos of expert and commentator, but it's a different level. Sorry, guys. It was really, and the thing is, if you are able to channelize, and this is the problem. That was the problem I felt very often. if you let Novi be the commentator on his own, he's going to go into some story and he's going to get lost in that story because he's got so much of information in his head. He will get lost in that story and talk about 1952. He knew every referee. Oh, this referee is this. Sini does this, and his father does that. And it's incredible how much of background info Novi had. And then it's like, if you're in a match, so I was sort of the lead commentator. Novi was the expert in the Durand Cup final. Always keep him on point. Let's stick to the game. And I was watched those 10 minutes at the time when Novi died, and I was feeling as like, hey, this is how Indian football commentary should actually be.
It's crazy how much he's like, even you, like did you saw his work process? How was he remembering all these things? Because again, you told Spartan, like he just gets lost in stories, and obviously if you get attained to it, you definitely feel like, wow, like he's sort of like, showing you different perspective about everything. He knows everything about everything mostly. Like it's not like he's going to touch it, like he's going to delve deep, say 2-3 lines about that. And also, like, how did he do that? Was it like very much hard work, passion? Like was the one intricate thing you noticed about him?
So Novi, the thing is, he could remember things. I don't know how.
Is it genetic?
He heard something.
Is it genetic?
And he was always early at the ground. He used to speak to the officials, find out आप कौन है, किधर से आए हैं, क्या काम करता है, family कहाँ है, and sticks. But he used to also have his notes. And again, it's yeah, a lot of these stories sadly are now lost because Novi no longer is there. That's the sad part.
Do you feel sorry for whether people really respect, like not respect, but sort of got the exposure of a journalist, or I don't know what the word to use, for a legend like Novi Kapadia? Or do you feel like even you, because you are a legend too, like again, you talk about the respect sort of in terms of like not younger generation, obviously that's something new, but maybe even the people who sort of, the Renedy time and all, did they sort of showed much appreciation?
For Novi, sure. Thing is, I think if Novi would have been 10 years younger, maybe he could have been a little bit more involved in the whole ISL scenario. I think that would have been good for him, but good also for the ISL, because I think that's a quality that you rarely have. I think the ISL does have certain young Indian talent, which I really like. I do like, let's say, Bhulostadhor. I love his commentary. I love Anand Tyagi. The way these guys do it. That's sheer quality. But otherwise, there's not that much. There are some young guys who are trying their luck in the I League. I think there are 2 or 3 boys who could be good. If you listen to them. But the problem is that you see, even though whatever's available today, and a lot of stats and other information is available automatically today. So in the old days, we used to sort of gather our own stats, and that sticks. That sticks. If I'm gathering, I think some infos is like, okay, Salgaonkar has done this, or I remember I did once. I was expert of the day. I think Novi was the commentator, and it was Salgaonkar versus JCT. So Sukhvinder Singh was very often, when his team was losing or winning, was very predictable in the substitutions. And I remember I told Mayanti Langar at halftime, these are the 3 substitutions that Sukhvinder Singh will do if the result stays 0-1 for the remainder of the game. And it was quite funny that it stayed that way, right? And this is just sheer knowledge that you have, and it's just and this is a skill, a technique. You leave. I feel it's a lot nowadays about a lot of numbers. And it's a lack about stories and about the backgrounds. Very often I realize that certain commentators don't even know to which players to say the first name or the second name, or discussion recently about foreign player, the name, it's Hugo Bumu. Everyone says Hugo Bumu, yeah, because you think it's French. But I know from the guys at Mumbai City that he actually is Hugo Bumus. So I've been saying it wrong because I've never interacted with the player. But these are basic things that you normally, if you're able to interact with teams, that you find out, You know, especially now with the Eastern European names. I don't know, let's say Lukasz Gikiewicz, you know, so even an English commentator can't do that, right? It's a Polish name. So those are things. Say the names. I am very particular about that, whatever name from wherever country, that you try to say the name correctly. And a lot of people just don't care, you know.
I think definitely it has to, again, come with the topic of कि professional काफी बढ़ गया. Like there's data, there's so many information. They don't go out of their reach to sort of, that's the whole process जो चीजों को, दिमाग में sort of fix कर दे कि हाँ, like this is what
the communication has gone down.
Right.
In the past, you used to regularly go to teams and interact with them and try and find out things. And it's not just, again, team inside infos come automatically. You don't need to ask. But again, trying to find out, hey, listen, what's the name of a certain coach? How do you say the certain name of a player? I remember when we were there was a big discussion about the name of Mizo players. Some of them it's like La, Ram, whatever. After that, sorry, but it was very complicated. Malswam Tulunga, Tulunga is spelled totally differently now than it used to be spelled originally. Or even a Renedy Singh used to be the Telegraph used to write it with a double N. Baichung or Bhaichung. Big discussion. I thought he told me always it used to be Baichung. Nowadays he says it's Bhaichung. It's a discussion actually that you need to have with Bhai. So it's again, there's some certain names that there's been a lot of chaos and a lot of discussions over the years.
There's so many questions I can ask. And this discussion can go on for, I think, eternity. I don't know, because
we can do a second episode if you want.
We have to, I think. But yeah, the last question I would say, and I know it's a very generic question again, and you've answered this question before, but apart from that answer, if there's one thing you can do to improve or change the state of Indian football, apart from the structural pyramidal thing, obviously, what step would you take?
I would like to try and educate young people in different aspects of football, from an operational, from an organizational standpoint, on the coaching standpoint. Get them the right education, get them the right experiences as well, so that they can take Indian football forward. That's the only way. I think, again, it's nice to have people doing D license, C license, B license, A, Pro. How many of the coaches, and no disregard or disrespect, but are actually going into depth about what are they going to work with? I know Indian coaches who in the late 80s got the pro license in Germany. So the first Indian pro license coaches actually got it in Germany in 1989.
Interesting.
One coach used it, another one didn't, and I'm not naming them, but and that's a problem. If you're getting experience, if you're getting chances, learn from those experiences, and this is very, very important. And learn also. I mean, I always say to myself, every day that you wake up, you will learn things which you didn't know yesterday. It's a never-ending process, and and also allow criticism. I think the biggest problem that Indian football has is allow criticism, and not allow criticism, but allow constructive criticism. Criticism is going to be there, but pick out the criticism which is good. What are the things that can be improved, that need to be improved? And there's lots to be improved. I mean, we didn't even talk about women's football. It's most probably the likelihood that women's football will bypass men's football in the next month is very, very huge. I feel that it could be that India could be going to a World Cup in a few weeks. So that opportunity is there. What happens then? Because then will Indian football explode? It's possible.
We have to talk a lot. We have to do a second part, without a doubt. It has been a pleasure, without a doubt. I've learned a lot, and I think definitely people watching it must have learned a lot. Yeah, that's crazy. I think you should open a podcast of yourself, right? Talk about all of the experiences you had and sort of educate really people like me and all of people who want to know about stuff and want to contribute. for the betterment, especially काफी लोग selfish भी है, या मुझे अपनी lifetime में इंडिया को वर्ल्ड कप खेलते हुए देखना, and maybe if that's the
I mean,
motivation force.
that is also why we started Indian football. I remember we were sitting in Germany at the World Cup draw in '99. Chris and I created a section on IndianFootball.com called India's Passage to Germany. We were so, I would say today, we are so naive that we thought that 99 में ठीक है चलो World Cup हो जाएगा, कुछ ना कुछ हो जाएगा, India 2006 Germany में खेलेगा. It's like, okay, let's not get into the details, but it's you have dreams, and you know, for me, I was lucky. 2017, I was there when the Under-17 World Cup happened, watching a lot of matches, watching India play in Delhi, watching the final. Sadly, watching Germany lose to Brazil in Kolkata at a packed stadium. But you know, those experiences are there, and that's the fun.
That's the question. What's the best game of football you've witnessed of India? Like the most interesting one?
I think in 2002. No, sorry, in 2000, when India held West Bromwich Albion to a goalless draw. West Brom at the time a championship side. West Brom and Fulham both were championship sides. Both got promoted at the end of the season. It was the combination of India playing. I remember in the afternoon Bangladesh was also there. So I looked at in the afternoon, I was watching Bangladesh, and then they played Huddersfield, and then traveled across to watch India play West Brom. And the atmosphere was brilliant. 13,000 people at the Hawthorns, 12,000 Indians. And there was this flying header by Baichung, which he should have scored. And I remember, you know, I felt, okay, India now has arrived. To me, in my head, I felt India's arrived. Even you know, and that is one. I feel another game. You know, if I go down the timeline, 2001, India beating the UAE, that would be always the highlight of a win. 2011, India playing Australia at the Asian Cup. You know, seeing the Indian flag and hearing the national anthem. You know, those are things that we'll not forget. Or even the draw against Qatar in 2019. You know, those are the highlights. Even 2019, of course. Sorry, not to forget 2019 Thailand, the 4-1. You know, and I remember we were there. Subrata Datta was sitting not next to me. India was leading. He sat next to me. India conceded a goal. He moved away. We all went in for halftime for food. And then suddenly, I remember Sunanda Dhor starts shouting, said, India scored. What India scored? 2-1. And I remember even the AFC staff, a lot of them are Indian origin. They were celebrating. So that was great, that 4-1. So, you know, there's been quite a few highlights, I will say, from an India perspective over the years of wherever India has played, or even I remember the Indian juniors playing a game against Bayer Leverkusen, even though they lost 2-0. I thought India was as good, and if not better than an under-16 side like, you know, that of Bayer Leverkusen. So yeah, I've seen a few games over the years.
Again, this could drag on. I'm really sorry for taking your time. Like, काफी time ले मैंने, but I had fun. We all had fun. I hope it was good. I'll meet you again. इस podcast के through कभी, I don't know, कभी भी, मुझे पता नहीं. You never know about life, but yeah, I had fun. Thank you so much for your time, Arunava sir. And
more than welcome. It was great fun.
Let's see what happens. Indian football में. Let's see.